Storytelling is a deceptively hard thing to get right. You're probably thinking it's not that hard to read Little Susie, the synopsis for the end of Evangelion for the 83rd time in a row before bed, but if you take the time to disassemble any traditional folklore or something out of an indigenous culture, you'll find that these narratives have crafted beautiful messages and meanings within themselves, which many people are incapable of doing. It's one thing to say that you're good at retelling a story from out of a book, but it takes a lot more skill to tell an original story just from ideas, experiences, and thoughts. Storytelling is undoubtedly an art form which utilizes many different techniques that engages and immerses an audience into a narrative. So if you're playing a game and find that its suspense is really getting to you, or that the development of a certain character in an anime is remarkably strong, most of that has to do with the power of storytelling. Now, Flip Flappers is a show that many people recognize as having extraordinarily trippy and psychedelic visuals, or the show with the two half-and-half lesbians that have sick bods and fat asses. And although the show does have dynamic animations and a colorful artistic style, I think that Flip Flappers' greatest strength is in its storytelling. Now, I won't lie in saying that I wasn't too fond of Flip Flappers at first. In fact, I heavily disliked it. In its first 3 or so episodes, the audience is just thrown into this big, vast, and disassembled world with the smallest amount of detail about who each character is and what their roles are. Given the very little exposure to the main character Kokona, and along with the indistinct explanation of other characters like Paprika and the setting of pure illusion, it seemed as though the story was overwhelmingly confusing and questionable. The first half of the show felt like no progression was being made due to the fact that it felt like each episode lacked any sense of sequence. The events that would happen in one episode seemed pointless in the next because very little advancement was being made to both the story and the characters. But as I kept watching, I realized that the show was crafting a very complex story mainly through background characters and other subplots. The longer I watched, the more the plot made sense, and the more I liked it. That's because of the two important people who had a hand in crafting Flip Flappers' story: director Kiyotaka Oshiyama and writer and series compositor Yuniko Ayano. If you're unfamiliar with what series composition is, it's the role of managing the flow of the series' narrative. They decide what written content gets put into each episode. The director's job, of course, is to bring life to a scene, mainly deciding how it will look visually by utilizing color themes and camera angles. Not only were these two able to tell a distinguished story in a very clever way, they told multiple stories in distinct ways that the audience may have been unaware of. First, let's talk about Flip Flappers' main narrative. The story follows the common story pattern called the hero's journey. If you don't know what the hero's journey is, it's basically a step-by-step guideline crafted by Joseph Campbell that's used to tell a hero's adventure. You've most likely seen this pattern in tons of anime and games already, but if not, here's a brief rundown of it. First, an anxious hero gets introduced to a certain dilemma or a problem. They're faced with rising up to the challenge and accepting their call, only to be refused later due to some unwillingness or uncertainty from the hero. The hero is then met with a mentor who encourages them by means of advice or security to take their journey. The hero then sets off on their adventure, crossing the threshold to enter a new world where they face many challenges and trials. During said challenges, the hero is pushed to face things that they feared from the start, leading them to face a supreme ordeal that fully tests them and all of their skills. Only once they've overcome this ordeal may the hero claim their reward, whatever it may be. And after overcoming that ordeal, the hero must face their final battle where everything is on the line. Ultimately, the hero wins and returns home as a changed person. There's a great video by Extra Credits about the hero's journey that goes way more in depth and fully describes what each step entails, so I'll leave a link in the description for that. Now, if you fully absorb and take in the steps that the hero's journey goes through, you'll find that Flip Flappers literally follows the exact same pattern. Kokona gets introduced to Paprika, which leads to Paprika's bombarding request of asking Kokona to join her search for fragments in pure illusion, leading to an unavailing no from Kokona. Kokona then talks to Dr. Salt and realizes that she is tremendously needed, so she starts her journey by crossing the threshold into pure illusion, where they face many monsters and an assortment of other enemies. As more adventures continue in pure illusion, Kokona slowly starts to learn what's really happening around her, ultimately leading to a fallout with Paprika. This in turn sparks Kokona's final battle, where she must make everything right in order to save pure illusion and her own world. Now, in all fairness, the structure of this story really isn't anything new or something to be awestruck about. Tons of anime and video games follow this same pattern and have found greater success than Flip Flappers. So it's not a matter of which storytelling pattern or method was used, it's about how the story was told. This is where Yuniko Ayana's excellence comes into play. She was able to take episodes from the show and make it important even if it didn't feel like it. Although Yuniko wasn't on the Flip Flappers staff for the entirety of its runtime, she was able to lay out a framework that made each episode have significance to the ending, all while maintaining the hero's journey pattern and narrative momentum. The way she had the episode set up gave the ending so much more impact and created an intense buildup that was unbeknownst to the viewers at the start, all while making sure every single episode was noteworthy. But it was with Kiyotaka's directive spin on each episode that gave deeper meanings and subtext to Flip Flappers. The best example I can give is with episode 6, where Kokona and Papika are thrown into a world where they both share the same body of a girl named Ito. The twist is that Kokona experiences Ito when she feels happiness, while Papika experiences Ito when she feels lonely. The two girls realize that this embodiment of Ito is slowly becoming anguished due to her grandmother's losing battle with Alzheimer's, so they decide that they need to save Ito. Not only does this episode feature a very touching and emotional story based on its relatable subject material, it utilizes practices like color symbolism to tell the story. During the scenes where Ito is experiencing happiness by herself or with her grandmother, the scenes are tinted with an orange hue to represent said happiness. On the flip side, when Ito is experiencing depression or loneliness, the scenes tend to be tinted with a blue hue. This is just one of many examples where Kiyotaka was able to add on to Flip Flappers' storytelling. He helped the show in crafting strong episodic narratives through his ability to use techniques like framing, color symbolism, sound design, and so much more. These episodes tell fascinating stories on their own, which later episodes embrace and implement, fully intensifying the show's ending. Not only does Flip Flappers tell a story of Kokona's adventure and her coming of age, it tells a multitude of other stories through her adventure, and it's all done magnificently through the show's direction. Whether it be about depression, acceptance, love, sexuality, Flip Flappers was able to tell a classic narrative all by depicting these smaller stories that were combined with excellent direction and writing. Every episode carried significance to the narrative by both the workings of Kiyotaka and Yuniko. Their talents combined created tons of ideologies and themes that were displayed amazingly well and were consistent with the show's duration. If you were to take every episode and analyze it on its own without any reference from previous or further episodes, they're able to support themselves through their unique characteristics. And that's what I really love about Flip Flappers. It feels like a huge melting pot where a bunch of episodes that feature drastically different settings, themes, and stories were thrown into a collective that just so happened to create a really good show. The visuals are of course extremely beautiful and without a doubt a great part of the show too, but the uniqueness of how Flip Flappers set up its story and the way it conveyed it was what I truly admired the most. But that ass ain't bad either.
Hey, she had a fat ass, you know what I mean?